I stepped out of the taxi and felt the wind cut across my face like a blade-sharp cold and oddly familiar, exactly like the house I had avoided for 6 years. I told myself I was ready. I told myself I had rehearsed every breath, every step, every expression before walking through that front door. But the truth was simpler and more poisonous. A part of me still ached for their approval, even after everything they had done. That was why the words echoed before they were even spoken, floating in my mind like a curse I had carried my entire life. You're not as good as your sister Elena. I came back to end that sentence, and tonight at this Christmas dinner, they would hear my version of the truth. Whether they could survive it was a different question. The door creaked open before I touched the handle. My mother stood there framed by warm yellow lights and the faint smell of cinnamon. She looked almost exactly the same. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect disappointment etched into every angle of her face. Her eyes widened just a fraction when she saw me, then closed the way one closes a ledger after balancing an unwelcome number. Elena, she said, as if testing the name for bitterness. Hi, Mom. She stepped aside but did not embrace me. I didn't expect her to. My father, on the other hand, appeared behind her like a looming shadow, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and already irritated by my existence. You made it, he muttered. Traffic, I replied, though we both knew I was lying. I had sat in the car for 15 minutes outside their neighborhood, just breathing, gathering myself, reminding my heart that tonight wasn't about them. It was about revealing what they'd hidden. The living room was decorated exactly the way my mother liked it. Gold ornaments, white lights, a tree so perfectly symmetrical it seemed sculpted rather than grown. Holiday music played softly in the background. It should have felt warm. It didn't. What took you so long? Emily's voice floated from behind the tree before she stepped into view. There she was, the beloved daughter, the prodigy, the shining star of the Parker family. Emily Parker, future city councilwoman, media sweetheart, political golden girl. Her smile was polished like glass, her dress was elegant, understated, and her eyes were as cold as the night air outside. I came as soon as I could, I said. Emily's smile widened. Well, we're glad you could join us. Mom's been stressing about the seating arrangement for hours. She wanted everything perfect. Of course she did. My mother touched Emily's shoulder. She understands how important tonight is. The donors are watching, and your father's boss is stopping by later. I glanced between them. So this is a political dinner disguised as Christmas. It's a family Christmas, my father snapped. Don't start. I bit my tongue because if I started now, I wouldn't stop. Everyone returned to small tasks, checking dishes, adjusting decorations, pretending everything wasn't drowning in tension. I wandered into the hallway where the family portraits lined the walls. Every frame featured Emily front and center, birthdays, awards, graduation campaign posters. I searched for myself and found only one photo tucked between two oversized pictures of Emily, my high school graduation where I stood off to the side while Emily held my diploma like it belonged to her. I moved closer. It was strange how people could erase you not by removing you, but by shifting the focus so subtly that you became background noise. Elena, dinner's ready, Emily called. I followed the voices into the dining room, a long mahogany table set for 12, glittering with candles and polished silverware. I took my seat at the far end, exactly where they always put me. Emily sat next to my father. My mother sat across from them. I was at the corner like a misplaced ornament. No one knew what to do with. The conversation began innocently. Weather, politics, Emily's campaign, charity work, newspaper interviews, television appearances. I listened silently until my father turned to me with a forced politeness. So, how's work? I smiled thinly. Busy. I just closed a case last week. She's a defense attorney, my mother added with that familiar note of disapproval. Such an exhausting and dangerous job. Not at all like Emily's work with the community. Emily tilted her head sympathetically. But I'm sure you're doing your best. My fork paused midair. I am. Yes, well, my father laughed, carving turkey as if announcing a punchline. You've always been determined, even if You know, I stared at him, even if what? He waved his knife lightly. Even if you don't have the natural charisma Emily has, you're different types of people. My mother chimed in helpfully. Your sister has always had stronger leadership qualities. It's not a criticism, dear. Some people are just better at certain things. Emily gave me a soft, almost pitying smile. Mom means well. Silence wrapped around my throat like a fist. And then it happened so casual, so rehearsed. It was almost rhythmic. My father's voice cutting across the table like a blade sharpened over decades. Elena, you know you're smart and capable, he said. But you're not like Emily. You'll never be like your sister, and that's okay. You don't have to be as good as her to make us proud. The room fell quiet. My pulse hammered in my ears. The old wound, deep, raw, unhealed, opened again. They didn't even realize what they'd said. They never did. For them, it was normal, routine truth. But tonight I didn't swallow it, I didn't bury it. I felt the anger, the betrayal, the years of silence tightening inside me until it became something sharp enough to cut through every lie in this house. I set my fork down gently. Actually, I said softly, I didn't come here for your approval. My mother frowned. What does that mean? I looked straight at Emily. I came because I found something. Emily's expression shifted, just a flicker barely noticeable, but I saw it. A tightness around her eyes, a stiffening in her jaw. A flash of fear she tried to mask with a smile. What do you mean, she asked. I reached into my coat pocket and placed a thin folder on the tablecloth. My heart hammered, but my voice remained steady. Controlled sharp. 10 years ago, I said there was a car accident, a hit and run that killed a teenage boy. The case was closed quietly, too quietly. And recently a new witness came forward. My father's face drained of color. My mother's breath hitched. Emily's fingers tightened around her wine glass. I continued. Turns out the car involved was registered under our family. And the person driving that night wasn't just anyone. Emily whispered, Elena, stop. I leaned forward, my voice a low, deliberate whisper. I know what really happened, Emily. A glass shattered in someone's hand. My mother gasped. My father pushed back his chair violently, and in that moment, surrounded by holiday decorations, flickering candles, and a family held together by lies, I realized something profound. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were afraid of losing everything they'd built on top of me. Tonight was only the beginning. Tonight I would unravel them, one truth at a time. My father was the first to move. The chair legs scraped harshly against the hardwood as he stood up, his napkin falling from his lap like a surrendered flag. That's enough, he said, his voice low and shaking. It was the kind of tone that used to freeze me when I was a child, the sound of rules becoming punishment. This is not the time or place for your theatrics, Elena. I didn't flinch, not this time. Actually, I replied, keeping my gaze steady on Emily. This is the perfect time. You wanted a picture-perfect Christmas, a family gathering, a celebration of Emily's career. But there's something rotting underneath all this, and I'm done pretending I can't smell it. My mother pressed her fingers to her temples. Please, can we not do this? It's Christmas Eve. Christmas doesn't erase the past. I said if anything, it drags it back into the room and wraps it in tinsel. Emily finally moved. She reached across the table and touched the folder with the tip of one finger, as if it might burn her. You're bluffing, she said quietly. You don't have anything. I gave her a slow, humorless smile. You should know me better than that. Her jaw tightened. My father stepped closer to me, placing his hand flat on the table, looming over the folder like a guard shielding classified information. You've always had a flair for drama, he said, looking down at me, the way he used to, when I brought home anything less than perfection. Dragging up old tragedies to make yourself feel important. Old tragedies. The words snapped out of me before I could soften them. A boy died. Dad. His name was Liam Ortiz, 17 years old. He had a mother who still leaves flowers on the side of that road every December. I saw her last week. She still doesn't know what really happened to her son. You call that old? The name seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Liam. I hadn't planned to say it out loud that soon, but the moment it left my mouth, the room changed. My mother's eyes filled with tears she seemed angry to have. Emily looked away. My father's jaw clenched so tightly the muscle jumped. You need to leave, he said, right now. I almost laughed. I left 6 years ago. Remember, you made sure of that. He opened his mouth. but I didn't give him the chance. 6 years I continued the memories clawing their way up from the dark corner where I'd buried them. And 10 years since Liam died, I tried to forget. I tried to believe I was wrong, but files don't lie. I glanced at Emily again. People do. The folder sat between us like a landmine. I could feel their panic radiating from it. Either we talk about this now, I said, or I take this to a place where you don't control the narrative. My mother's voice came out thin, brittle. We are not criminals, Elena. Whatever you think you know. I looked at her, and for a moment I saw not the polished woman obsessed with status, but a terrified mother watching the walls close in. Sit down, I said quietly. All of you, I'm not going anywhere. For the first time in my life, they listened to me. My father sat down slowly, his face rigid, his movements mechanical. My mother sank into her chair as if her bones had finally accepted the weight they'd been carrying. Emily stayed very still, eyes fixed on the folder. My heart pounded so loudly I thought they might hear it. But my hands were steady as I opened the flap and spread the documents onto the table. Printouts, photocopies, grainy photos, a witness statement. Do you remember the night of December 23rd? I asked, my voice suddenly calm 10 years ago. No one answered. I didn't really need them to. I remembered it well enough for all of us. Back then I was 20. Home from college for the holidays. Emily was 22, already working as an intern for the mayor's office already, the golden child already, the one everyone said was destined for greatness. We'd argued that night. I could still hear the cadence of our voices, the rising volume, the way our words ricocheted off the walls like stray bullets. It had started small, it always did. Who got to use the car, who my parents sided with? Who was more responsible, more mature, more deserving? Little things layered over years until they formed a mountain no one wanted to climb. You think you're better than me because you read case law. Emily had snapped, pacing back and forth in my bedroom. Her cheeks flushed. You walk around like some righteous crusader, but you don't understand how the real world works. And you think smiling for cameras and saying what people want to hear makes you a hero? I'd shot back. You're just playing dress up with other people's lives. She'd glared at me, eyes blazing. At least Mom and Dad are proud of me. The words hit a nerve so raw I still felt it years later. The argument escalated. I remembered yelling something like, "One day your perfect image is going to crack. And when it does, I won't be there to help you hide it." She'd stormed out then, grabbing the car keys from the hook by the door. "I'm going out," she'd shouted to our parents as she slammed the front door. "I need air." I watched her taillights fade down the street, feeling a knot of anger and something darker in my chest. They found out about the accident the next morning. Liam Ortiz had been walking home from a late shift at a diner. A car had come around the corner too fast. Slick road, poor visibility. He never had a chance. The driver didn't stop. The news reported it as a tragic hit and run, the kind that appears for one day, then vanishes under the weight of more sensational headlines. But the story didn't vanish in our house. It hung there unspoken like a ghost. Because Emily came home late that night with a cracked headlight and shaking hands. I had seen her, standing in the dark kitchen, her fingers clutching a glass of water so tightly her knuckles were white. Her eyes were wide, unfocused, like she was watching something replay behind them. I'd whispered, "What happened?" She'd jumped, almost dropping the glass. "Nothing, I hit something. A dog, I think. It ran off before I could see if it was okay." The lie had felt thin even then. But what had scared me wasn't the story. It was the silence that followed. Dad took the car to get it fixed. Mom didn't ask questions. Or if she did, they asked them behind a closed door. I was never allowed to open. Within days, the police announced they were following leads. Within weeks, the case went quiet. I'd tried to talk about it. I'd tried to ask questions. Every time my parents shut me down. "You don't know what you're talking about, Elena. You're overreacting. Do you want to ruin your sister's life over your wild assumptions?" And then came the night that pushed me out of the house for good. I'd overheard them talking in Dad's study, the door slightly ajar. "She can't keep asking questions," my father had said. "If this resurfaces, it could ruin everything for Emily, for us." "She's just jealous," my mother replied. "She'll calm down. She always does." What if she doesn't? A pause. A rustle of paper. A sigh. "Then we'll make sure she understands what's at stake." The next morning, my father sat me down at the table with a look I recognized from every lecture, every disappointment. "You're imagining things," he'd told me. "You're creating drama because you can't stand that your sister is finally getting what she deserves." If you keep pushing this, there will be consequences. Do you understand me? I'd looked at him and realized I would never be believed. Not over her. Not in this house. So I left. I told them I needed space. They didn't stop me. For a long time, I tried to convince myself I'd been wrong, that the cracked headlight, the shaking hands, the late-night conversation were just coincidences. I buried myself in law school in cases and facts. Facts were solid. Facts didn't care who your parents favored. Then 3 months ago, Liam's name landed on my desk. I was working pro bono on a wrongful death claim. The mother couldn't let go. She'd hired a private investigator years ago who'd turned up nothing concrete. But he'd kept notes, lots of them, a license plate partial, a description of a dark sedan with a dented front end seen speeding away from the scene, a witness who'd been ignored because he was drunk that night, and poor and not the kind of person the police liked to listen to. The partial plate matched our car. The make, model, and year matched too. I'd pulled the old insurance records, the repair receipts dug through public databases, until the story started stitching itself together in a pattern I recognized. It led me back here, to this table, to my sister who now sat staring at the documents, as if they might rearrange themselves into something less damning if she wished hard enough. "Why are you doing this?" my mother whispered, now her voice breaking. "Why can't you just let it go?" "Because I see his mother's face every time I close my eyes," I said. "Because she asked me, 'Do you think my son mattered to anyone?' And I couldn't say yes. Not honestly. Not while I know what's in this folder." I tapped the witness statement. "This man saw the driver," I continued. "He got a better look than anyone realized. The cops dismissed him, but I didn't. I sat with him. I listened. I showed him photos. He remembered the decal on the back window, the campaign sticker, the one that was on your car back then. Emily?" Emily flinched like I'd slapped her. "That doesn't mean—" He remembered more. I cut in. He remembered the driver's hair, the color of her coat, the way she gripped the wheel. He was drunk, not blind. My sister's composure cracked. Just a little. Her lips trembled, her eyes glistened. "You don't understand what you're messing with," she said, her voice raw. "You don't understand what this will do?" "Oh, I do," I said softly. "It will hurt your campaign. It will destroy Dad's reputation. It will shatter the perfect little snow globe you've all been living in. But you know what else it might do?" No one answered. "It might give Liam's mother the truth. And it might give me back the years you stole from me when you let me walk out of this house thinking I was crazy." For a long moment, there was only the sound of the fireplace crackling in the next room, and the faint echo of Christmas music drifting from the living room. It sounded obscene now, bright and cheerful against the suffocating tension. My father spoke at last, each word forced through clenched teeth. "What do you want, Elena?" There it was. Not "we're sorry," not "tell us what happened so we can make it right." Just "what do you want?" I met his eyes and felt a strange, cool clarity settle over me. "I want the truth," I said, "all of it. No more half-stories, no more gaslighting. I want to know exactly what happened that night. And I want you to stop treating me like the problem, just because I remember." Emily swallowed her gaze, dropping to the table to the scattered papers that now looked like fragments of a shattered mirror. "What if the truth destroys us?" she whispered. I held her stare when she finally looked up again. "Then maybe I said we deserve to be destroyed." Her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. Fear, guilt, anger, or all three woven together. Then Emily pushed back her chair, the sound sharp in the heavy air. "Fine," she said, her voice suddenly flat. "You want the truth? You'll get it." She glanced at our parents, then back at me, and for the first time I saw something almost like surrender in her expression. "But when I tell you everything," she added quietly, "you might wish you'd never asked." Emily didn't wait for anyone to react. She smoothed the skirt of her dress with trembling fingers and walked toward my father's study. The room no one was allowed to enter without permission. The room where secrets went in and never came out. The room that had once been off-limits to me, as if my mere presence might contaminate the polished wood and leather-bound integrity my father treasured more than his own children. I followed her. My parents remained frozen at the dining table, as if standing meant acknowledging what was coming. My mother clutched the edge of her napkin like a lifeline. My father stared at the untouched turkey as though it could undo everything simply by remaining intact. But neither of them moved. Emily reached the study door and paused with her hand on the brass handle, her breath unsteady. When she finally pushed it open, warm, Lamplight spilled across the hallway carpet. The room smelled faintly of tobacco and old paper. I stepped inside behind her. She closed the door softly, then leaned against it, as if afraid the truth might escape before she could control it. "You think you know everything?" she said. Her voice low. "You don't." I crossed my arms. "Then tell me what I don't know?" She let out a shaky laugh. "God, Elena. You always wanted things to fit neatly into categories, right and wrong. Guilty and innocent. You think life is as clean as a courtroom. It's cleaner than what you're implying." She pushed off the door and walked toward our father's desk. She didn't sit. She merely stared at the dark wood surface, tracing invisible lines with her fingertip. "You asked about the night of the accident," she began. "Fine. Here's what you don't know. I wasn't alone." The words hit harder than I expected. I blinked. "What are you talking about? You left the house alone." "No," Emily shook her head. "Dad followed me. I didn't know he did. Not until later. But he was tailing me down the road." I stared at her, the memory shifting shape in my mind. "Dad? Why would he follow you?" "Because he saw us fighting. Because he knew I was angry, unstable, spiraling. And because he was already worried I'd ruin something important for him if I made a scene in public." A cold feeling slid down my spine. "So he followed you to— what? Make sure you didn't embarrass him." "Something like that." She walked around the desk, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor, pacing with a rhythm that matched her unraveling composure. "I was driving too fast. The roads were slick. I was crying. Okay, I couldn't see clearly. I didn't even realize I was turning that corner until I felt the car jolt. I thought," her voice cracked, "I thought I hit a deer." "But you didn't." My voice felt like paper thin and fragile. "You hit Liam." She squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping out like they had been waiting years for permission. "Yes, I hit him. But I swear, Elena, I didn't know. I didn't stop because I didn't know. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly it hurt." But she wasn't finished. I pulled over later, maybe a quarter mile down the road. Dad stopped behind me. He got out, came to the window and asked what happened. I told him I thought I'd hit something. He told me to go home. I took a step toward her. "He told you to leave the scene of an accident. He told me to go home." She repeated, her voice hollow. "So I did. I showered. I changed. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink." She finally looked at me, her eyes red. "Dad went back." My heart thudded painfully back. "To the scene. He told me the next morning that he checked the road and didn't see anything. He said whatever I hit must have run off. He looked so calm, Elena, so certain I believed him." A bitter taste filled my mouth. "He lied to you." She nodded, one tear slipping down her cheek. "He lied to protect me, or so I thought." A silence settled between us, a heavy shifting silence that seemed to pulse with something bigger than both of us. "And Mom?" I asked quietly. "Did she know?" Emily hesitated. "Dad told her. Maybe a week later." She was furious. Not at me, at him. She said he should have handled it better. That letting the police investigate would have destroyed our family. I pressed a hand against my forehead, so they covered it up together. They tried. Emily paced again, wringing her hands. "The car had to be repaired, but Dad had a mechanic he trusted. He told them it was minor damage from backing into a pole. They didn't question him. And the police. Dad called someone he knew. He made the whole thing disappear." I sank into one of the leather chairs, the weight of the truth crushing down on me. "All this time, I thought you were the villain of the story." Emily shook her head slowly. "I'm not innocent. But I'm not the monster you've imagined either." I swallowed hard. "If Dad went back to the scene, he would have seen Liam." She nodded. "And he still told you to go home. He let you believe you'd hit nothing." Another nod. The room felt smaller now, claustrophobic with truth. I stood up abruptly. "I need to hear it from him." Emily stepped in front of the door. "Elena, wait." "No." My voice was sharp enough to cut. "He can't hide behind you anymore." She lifted her chin. "If you confront him, you won't get a confession. You'll get denial, manipulation, gaslighting, the same thing he's always done. Then I'll keep pushing until something breaks." Her eyes darkened. "And what if what breaks is us?" I stopped breathing for a moment, not because she said it, but because she said it like it was something precious, something worth preserving. "I softened just an inch, Emily. I'm not trying to destroy you." Her voice lowered. But you will. If you keep going like this, you'll drag me into a storm. I barely survived once. You're already in it. She shook her head violently. No. This time it will be different. He won't protect me again. Not now. Not when my campaign is at stake. If he has to choose between me and himself, he'll choose himself. The truth in her words made my stomach twist. What are you saying? I whispered. I'm saying... Her voice faltered. I'm saying Dad didn't cover it up just to protect me. He covered it up because he was involved. I froze. What do you mean? She took a shaky breath. He told me he followed me on the road, that he saw me hit something, but that's not the whole truth. What's the whole truth? Emily looked up at me, her face pale. Dad wasn't driving behind me, she whispered. He was driving in front of me. My blood turned to ice. No, it couldn't be. I swallowed. He was in front, how? He had left the house right before me. Through the side garage, I didn't hear the car. He didn't want anyone to know he was gone. When I turned the corner, I saw taillights. They weren't mine. They were his. I gripped the back of the chair for balance. So when the witness described the driver hitting Liam, I said slowly, my voice shaking, he didn't see you. Emily closed her eyes. No, he didn't. My pulse thudded painfully in my ears. He saw Dad. I felt the world tilt under my feet. All this time. All these years. The guilt etched into Emily's face. The fear. The silence. The cover-up. It all pointed to something bigger, darker, more calculated. Dad lied to both of us, Emily whispered. He used your fight with me as a distraction. He let me believe I hit someone. He let you believe I ruined that boy's life. He let me drown in guilt because it kept me quiet. My breath came out in a shudder. Why, I asked. Why would he do that to you? To protect himself, she said. And because he knew I wouldn't question him. I wanted so badly to believe he was helping me. I let him twist everything. The ground beneath me felt like it was splitting open. I stared at my sister. Not the golden girl, not the untouchable prodigy, but a woman who had been bleeding silently for a decade. I approached her slowly. Emily, I said softly, if Dad was the one who hit Liam. She cut me off. Her certainty was a spear through the ribs. I felt something break inside me. Not anger, not triumph. Something quieter, sadder. Something like mourning, for the girl I once was, for the sister I thought I hated, for the truth I had chased without knowing its real shape. Emily wiped her eyes, smudging her mascara. So now you know everything, or at least the part I can bear to say out loud. My voice trembled. We need to confront him. She nodded slowly. Yes, but not like this. What do you mean? Emily stepped closer, lowering her voice. Dad has lived above the law his entire life. He has connections, influence, power. If we accuse him without proof, he'll bury us. She looked down at the folder in my hand. You have evidence, Elena. But you don't have the evidence. I swallowed. What evidence? Emily's eyes flicked toward the corner of the study. The locked cabinet our father kept behind a row of decorative books. The night of the accident, she whispered, Dad came home with something wrapped in a black trash bag. He hid it in that cabinet. My heart thudded. What was it? Emily's voice came out fragile and broken. The broken piece of his grill, the one with Liam's blood on it. My breath left my lungs like I'd been punched. And then she added, he kept the real evidence all these years, and I think he kept it because he always knew this day would come. A chill ran down my spine. Emily stepped back, her voice steadying. If you want the truth, Elena, that's where it is. I stared at the cabinet. The truth was in this room, and tonight I was going to open it. I moved toward the cabinet, as if pulled by a magnet. The weight of 10 years pressed against my spine. Emily hovered behind me, her breathing uneven, her fingers twisting the fabric of her sleeve. The locked cabinet stood tall and imposing, a dark monument to everything our father had buried. I could almost feel the gravity radiating from it, the truth humming behind the wood like a trapped animal. Did he ever open it in front of you? I asked. Emily shook her head. No, he keeps the key on him at all times, but he doesn't know that once. I watched where he hid the spare. My pulse quickened where. She hesitated for a moment, chewing her lip. Behind the framed photo of his inauguration at the firm, the one with the gold trim, I turned to look at the wall. The photo hung in the row of his greatest achievements, shaking hands with judges, posing with business partners, smiling with politicians. The inauguration photo stood out, too polished, too proud, Classic Dad. I lifted the frame carefully. It resisted at first, as if the house itself was unwilling to surrender its secrets. But then it came loose, revealing a small metal hook. A key dangled from it. A cold shiver sliced down my back. I slid the key off the hook, my hand trembling. Emily stepped closer, her voice barely audible. "This is the moment he can't come back from, and neither can we." I didn't answer. There was nothing to say. The truth was already moving beneath our feet. I knelt in front of the cabinet and inserted the key. For a second, I froze. My breath caught halfway in my throat, Emily whispered. I turned the key. The lock clicked, a small, anticlimactic sound for something that would rearrange our entire family. I opened the cabinet. Inside, row after row of binders, files, and neatly stacked boxes filled the space. But it was the black trash bag at the bottom that seized my attention. It sat crumpled and dusty, as if it had been untouched for years. My stomach twisted. "There," Emily whispered. "That's what he brought home." I reached for it, but before my fingers touched the bag, footsteps thudded down the hallway. Emily's eyes widened. "Dad," the doorknob rattled. I slammed the cabinet shut. Emily grabbed the frame and shoved it over the spare key hook. The door burst open a second later. My father stood in this doorway, chest heaving, jaw clenched so hard the muscles twitched. His eyes went straight to the cabinet, then to the key in my hand. His voice was deadly calm. "What do you think you're doing?" I rose slowly, fingers curling around the key. I felt Emily stiffen beside me. "Looking for the truth," I said. His eyes narrowed. "Give me the key." "No." His face hardened. "Elena, give me the key." "You hid evidence," I said, my voice barely steady. "Physical evidence from the scene. What's in the bag, Dad? A piece of your grill covered in blood. Or was it clothing? Something else?" His jaw ticked. A deadly silence spread through the room. "You need to stop this," he said, "both of you." Emily stepped forward. "We're not children anymore. You can't scare us into silence." He shot her a sharp look, wounded, betrayed. "I did what I had to do to protect this family." "No," I said softly. "You did what you had to do to protect yourself." For a heartbeat, something flickered in his eyes, fear maybe, or rage, or a combination of both. My mother appeared behind him, her face pale. "What's happening? Why are you two in here?" Emily answered before I could. "He never told the truth. Mom, not about the accident, not about what happened that night. He let me think I was guilty. He let Elena think I was responsible. He let me drown in guilt for years." My mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Emily. And he kept the evidence," I said, "all this time." I walked toward the cabinet again. "Don't," my father warned. His voice was no longer calm. It vibrated with the threat beneath it. "You don't know what you're doing." "That's the point," I said. "I've never known. Because you never let me." I opened the cabinet again. My father lunged forward. Emily grabbed his arm, holding him back. "Stop." "Emily, let go." "No." He struggled, but Emily used every ounce of strength. My mother rushed forward, grabbing his other arm. "David," she cried, "stop it." I reached into the cabinet and pulled the black bag out. It was heavier than I expected. Something inside shifted, thunking dully. "Elena," my father barked, "put that down." I placed the bag on the desk. My hands shook violently, but I forced myself to untie the knot. The smell of dust and rust hit me. I peeled the bag open. Inside was a twisted piece of chrome and black metal bent inward, like something had struck it hard. Along the jagged edge was a dried, dark stain, brownish red, unmistakable. Blood. And next to it, a broken headlight casing. I exhaled shakily. Emily stared at the pieces as if seeing a ghost she had been haunted by for a decade. My father sagged against my mother, the strength leaving him like air from a punctured tire. His face turned gray. My mother whispered, "David, what did you do?" He didn't answer. He couldn't, because the evidence answered for him. My hands hovered over the metal fragments, the weight of 10 years collapsing in on me all at once. This was it. The truth Emily had been imprisoned by. The truth I'd been exiled for chasing. The truth a boy's mother had been denied. I looked up at my father. "You hit Liam," I said, "not Emily, not anyone else, you." His eyes met mine, cold, calculating, then suddenly helpless. "Yes," he rasped. My stomach twisted. Hearing it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. I'd spent years trying to climb, only to realize the ground beneath me was already crumbling. "Why?" I whispered. "Why did you let Emily think she did it?" He closed his eyes. Pain and something darker creased his face. "Because," he said slowly, "she believed me. And because if I let her think it was her fault, she wouldn't tell anyone. She'd stay quiet. She'd stay loyal. Emily staggered back as if he had slapped her. You used me. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look ashamed. I did what I had to do, he said. You never would have survived the truth. Neither of you would have. The public, the press, my career, our reputation. We would have lost everything. You should have lost everything, I snapped. My father's eyes flashed. And you think ruining us now is justice? No, I said, it's accountability. He shook his head, a bitter smile curling at the edge of his mouth. You don't know the first thing about justice, Elena. You think the truth will set you free. It won't. The truth destroys. It ruins anyone who touches it. Look what it's already doing. He gestured around the room at Emily in tears, at my mother trembling at me standing amid the rubble of everything I ever knew. Are you proud of this? He asked. Are you proud of tearing your family apart? I'm proud of stopping you, I said quietly. Finally, something inside him snapped. You ungrateful! Enough! My mother's voice cracked like a whip. Enough, David. No more lies. She moved to stand between us, her face contorted with anguish. Tell them everything, she demanded. My father's shoulders sagged. His bravado drained. He looked older. Suddenly, decades older. Like the truth had been, the thing holding him upright. And now that it was free, he was nothing but a collapsing monument. He ran a hand over his face. I didn't see him in time. I was distracted. I had a drink before leaving the office. I wasn't supposed to be driving. He stepped into the road. I panicked. I drove home. I told myself he might live. I told myself, anything. You let Emily think it was her, I said, my voice cracking with disgust. I had to, he whispered. It was the only way. Emily sank into the leather chair behind her, shaking. My mother stared at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. I would have stood by you, she said. Why didn't you tell me? Because then you couldn't deny it, he said softly. My mother let out a broken sob. I stared at him. This man I had once tried so hard to earn approval from this man. I once wanted to believe was good, decent, moral. He was none of those things. He was a coward. Call the police, I said. He looked at me horrified, Elena. No, you don't get to talk your way out of this. You don't get another lie. You don't get another decade. Emily took a deep breath. I'll call. My father lunged forward. Emily flinched. But before he reached her, I stepped between them. You touch her, I said, my voice low and steady, and I swear to God you'll regret it. He froze. For the first time in my life, he was afraid of me. Emily lifted her phone. My father whispered, please don't. But Emily didn't stop. She pressed the digits. 911. She put the phone to her ear. Emily, he begged. I did it for you, for all of us. No, she said, tears dripping from her chin. You did it for yourself. The dispatcher's voice crackled through. 911. What's your emergency? Emily's voice broke as she answered. I'd like to report a confession to a hit-and-run homicide 10 years ago. My father was the driver. My father let out a strangled sound, half plea, half cry. My mother covered her mouth and collapsed into the nearest chair. I felt something dark and heavy lift from my chest. Not relief, not victory, but truth, raw and unforgiving. Emily hung up. Sirens echoed in the distance minutes later, growing closer. My father didn't move. He just stared at me. This is your fault, he whispered. No, I said softly. This is yours. When the police knocked on the door, the entire house held its breath. Emily grasped my hand. And for the first time since childhood, we stood together, united not by love but by truth. And the truth was finally here. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There are countless real-life betrayals, twists, and revenge stories waiting for you in the next episodes. The sirens grew louder until they swallowed the silence, long, rising wails that curled around the house like a tightening fist. The Parker family home, always pristine and controlled, now felt like a crime scene waiting to be outlined in chalk. Blue and red lights pulsed through the frosted windows, painting the walls in fractured colors that made everything look warped and unreal. My father stood motionless in the center of the study, as if those lights were freezing him in place. His hands trembled, not enough to look afraid, just enough to look human. My mother hovered behind him, her shoulders shaking. Emily clutched my hand so tightly, her nails dug half-moons into my skin, grounding herself with pain. Then came the knock, firm, official, inescapable. No one moved. Another knock, police opened the door. Emily inhaled sharply. I walked past them all. My fingers brushed the doorknob cold, as metal in winter air. When I opened it, two uniformed officers and a detective stood on the porch, breath frosting in the night. "Ma'am," the detective said, "we received a call about a confession." Behind me, I heard my father's voice crack. "Don't do this, Elena." But I stepped aside and let the officers in. The detective scanned the room, assessing faces, reading tension, like a script he'd seen 1,000 times. "Who made the report?" he asked. Emily stepped forward, her voice small but steady. "I did." He nodded. "And who is the individual confessing?" Emily looked at our father. The room held its breath. "He is," she said, "David Parker." The detective turned to him. My father tried to straighten his shoulders, but the weight he'd carried for a decade pinned him down. "Sir," the detective said, "we're going to need to ask you some questions." My father opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. His eyes darted from Emily to me, to the black trash bag on the desk. My mother clung to his arm. "Please, you don't understand. This will ruin us." The detective replied, "Ma'am, someone died. We're here for the truth." For the first time all night, I believed those words. The detective approached the desk. When he saw the metal fragments inside the bag, his jaw tightened. "Is this the evidence you were referring to?" "Yes," I said, "it was hidden in this cabinet," Emily added. "He brought it home the night of the hit and run 10 years ago." The detective stared at my father. "Is that true, Mr. Parker?" My father closed his eyes. His lips moved, but he couldn't say the words. "Not yet." "Sir," the detective pressed, voice firm, "did you strike Liam Ortiz with your vehicle on December 23rd? My father's eyes snapped open, and for one moment, one unbearable suspended moment, I saw the truth behind them. The same truth that had haunted Emily and me all these years. "Yes," he whispered. A sound escaped my mother, something between a gasp and a sob. Emily's grip on my hand tightened. "Did you leave the scene?" "Yes." "Did you conceal evidence?" "Yes." The room tilted as if the confession itself reshaped the air. "Put your hands behind your back," the detective said quietly. "You are under arrest." My mother lunged forward. "No, please, you can't do this. Please, this is a mistake." "Ma'am," the detective said firmly, "step back." Her knees buckled and she collapsed into a chair, shaking violently. Emily covered her face. I couldn't move. I watched as my father, proud, intimidating, indestructible, slowly turned, his hands trembling behind him as the officer placed handcuffs around his wrists. The metallic click was final, slicing through our family's last illusion. "This is your fault," he said again. But the anger was gone. Only something hollow remained. "You should have stayed away," maybe I said quietly. "But you should have told the truth." The officer guided him toward the doorway. The house that had always been too big, too immaculate, seemed to shrink with every step he took. Christmas decorations glowed behind him, garland and ornaments, shimmering like mocking witnesses. Before crossing the threshold, he paused. "Elena," he said without turning around, "you think justice will fix this? You think it will make you whole? It won't. You'll regret this." "No," I said softly. "I regret not knowing sooner." And then he was gone. The door closed. The sirens faded and the silence left behind felt heavier than any noise. My mother sobbed into her hands. Emily sank onto the sofa, shaking uncontrollably. I stood alone in the center of the room, gripping the back of a chair to steady myself. For the first time in years, the house felt painfully unfamiliar-like. A set built around a lie that had finally collapsed. Emily wiped her eyes and whispered, "What happens now?" I sat beside her. "Now, we tell Liam's mother everything. We give her this folder. We give her the truth she's been waiting a decade for." Emily nodded slowly, as if absorbing the weight of it. "I don't know if she'll forgive us." "She doesn't have to," I said. "This isn't about forgiveness. It's about finally giving her what no one ever did. Honesty." My mother looked up, eyes red. "What about us? What happens to this family, to me?" Her voice trembled with fear, but also something else. Something almost childish. As if she was realizing too late that the foundation she clung to had been cracked long before tonight. I took a deep breath. "This family wasn't destroyed tonight," I said gently. "It was destroyed 10 years ago. Tonight, we just stopped pretending." My mother bowed her head and cried harder. Emily leaned into me, her shoulder touching mine. It felt unfamiliar, but right. "Elena," she whispered, "I'm sorry for everything. For believing him. For letting you leave. Hey, I said, squeezing her hand. We both survived him. That's enough. She let out a broken laugh. It feels like we're starting over. We are. A long silence settled between us, one that wasn't hostile or heavy, just honest. Finally, Emily said, I don't know what the world will think of me now. The campaign, the donors, everything is over. Then let it be over, I said. You don't need to live in his shadow anymore. You don't need to be perfect. Just be real. She looked at me with wet eyes. And what about you? What do you do now? I exhaled, letting the question linger, letting it sink into the cracks of the room. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in a long time, I think I'm finally free to figure it out. Emily leaned her head on my shoulder. My mother cried softly in the corner. The house creaked as if exhaling after a decade of suffocating secrets. Outside, distant church bells began to ring for midnight mass. Christmas. Not the one we expected, not the one we wanted, but the first honest one we'd had in years. And in the quiet that followed, I realized something. Sometimes truth doesn't heal. Sometimes it destroys. But sometimes destruction is the only way anything real can begin again. Tonight, everything ended. Tomorrow, something new would begin.